John McMullen writes, it's Christmas, it's St. Nick. Nick Foles breaks the Eagles' franchise record for passing yards in a game. Nick Foles, a massive second half. Of course, we forget about the first half where he had the fumble and the interception, but hey, it's Christmas time, so we're trying to be positive. John McMullen joins us now. John, how you doing on this Christmas Eve?
I'm doing well. Yeah, you've noticed there's no complaints over pass-run ratio.
Right.
There's no complaints over being too Zach Ertz-centric because it's St. Nick.
And they won.
And he does it again. Yeah, winning cures everything.
It really does.
So, a lot of the same issues the Eagles have had are still there, but you got to give the guy credit. He finds ways to win football games, and I think the biggest difference has been the situational football. He was 15 out of 16 on third and fourth downs. So when that happens, nothing else matters. It doesn't matter if you're passing, doesn't matter if you're running. That means you're converting, and that means you're scoring points, and that's exactly what happened.
John, someone asked this question earlier. I wanted to get your thoughts on this. They asked, and someone on the text board was texting us and asked us, if Doug Peterson called the game the same way with Wentz that he does with Foles, would the Eagles have won more games? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a catch-22 because you don't and you never will. So I think it's kind of the best example of that would be Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. I mean, you do rely and you do use quarterbacks who are superstars as a bit of a crutch. And you do hunker down. And I talked about it last week. One of the issues, and it's not only the coaching staff, it's also the players. The players understand. They got to focus in a little bit more when the backup is in there. And they have to pay a little bit more attention to detail. It's just human nature. If you have a superstar player on the field, sometimes you say, he'll probably bail me out. You see it in the NBA all the time. Best example, whether you want to look at LeBron James, Michael Jordan, whoever. Yeah, I mean, you play differently when you're around players like that. And I don't know how you change that. I think if people could figure out how to change that, the Packers probably have 5 or 6 rings right now.
John, Nick Foles got a little emotional in the post game about the fact that, they were asking if this possibly been his last home game at Lincoln Financial Field. It feels like to me that Nick is really living in the moment. He's not trying to think too far ahead, but
you think?
Well,
he says that every other line.
But John, when he's laying on the ground after he gets blasted by Clowney, I mean, this is a guy who just a few years ago was getting ready to walk away from football, to become a pastor, and spend time with his family. 3 years later, he's Super Bowl MVP. He's got money in the bank, and he's laying on the ground after getting the wind knocked out of him by Jadeveon Clowney. Do you think there's a part of Nick Foles who maybe he is questioning how long do I really want to keep doing this?
I don't think he's questioning that right now because he's been so successful. Certainly that in the past, if it wasn't Andy Reid that came knocking on this door to bring him to Kansas City, he probably would have retired. He was only going to play for Andy at that particular time, and obviously Doug is an offshoot of Andy. So that worked out for him. He loves Philadelphia. He loves this organization. He loves playing for this team. But I don't know how he's going to walk away from over $20 million. He's going to get it from somebody next year. So that, to me, is difficult to do. And I don't think ultimately he will do that. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, I joked, if you took the story in Hollywood and Land of Make Believe, they'd tell you, get out. No one's going to buy this. And he's doing it again.
John, let's look big picture now. And obviously today there's been a lot of debate, as has been last week and really all year, about Nick Foles versus Carson Wentz. And let's play a scenario out. Eagles win this week, Vikings lose, Wentz is cleared to play. Does he start against the again in the playoffs And if he doesn't, is it harming him more than helping him?
Well, he's not going to play, number one. This is Nick Foles' team for the rest of this season, however long that goes. I don't know. I think that's the more difficult behind-the-scenes issue for Doug Peterson. Today, he intimated for the first time. It left the door slightly ajar, and I just wrote about this on 973ESPN.com, for leaving the door open for Nick Foles and the fact that he's going to start. Now, the difficult part from Doug's standpoint is managing Carson Wentz, who wants to play. And quarterbacks play injured all the time. So the term he used today, remember, he put the timetable of 3 months early on. So he gave himself an out in that instance. And today he used the term 100%. Well, he's not going to be 100%. So you don't have to worry about him being medically cleared. So what it is this is Foles' team right now. It's Carson Wentz's team next season, and that's how it's going to move forward. The only thing that could muck that up on the field is if you do make the playoffs, say, and then Nick gets hurt, and then you put Carson back in. To be honest, I don't even think the Eagles would do that, because that would open up the Pandora's box of admitting, even though Carson Wentz was healthy enough to play, we essentially benched him for Nick Foles. So I don't even think if Nick gets banged up, they're going to put Carson Wentz in the game. I really don't.
Wow. And kind of going back to what you said in the conversation with Josh when you were talking about Nick Foles' future, someone, like you said, is going to give him $20 million guaranteed. It's a quarterback's league, and after the role he's been on the last 2 years, someone is going to say, hey, we want this guy in our organization. Is there a great chance, though, that Nick says, you know what, I don't want to go through that again? Not that I'm not confident in myself, but that's just a whirlwind of emotions and stuff like that I have to go through. How about I go to Howie Roseman and say, listen, just give me the same deal with more incentives, and I'll just be the guy here that, hey, if the Wentz thing doesn't work out with him getting injured or him struggling, I'm always here to fall back on.
No, I don't. I think people kind of assume. I don't know if it's because of his faith or just because of the way he's been a great teammate. They assume he's not competitive. He's extremely competitive. He wants to play. He knows he can play elsewhere and be a starter in this league. He deserves to be a starter in this league. So no, I don't think he would accept being a backup. Now, he does know, and he has admitted in the past, that there are situations that are bad and that you're going to fail on, and it doesn't matter. And he kind of learned that when he left here. So he does want to find a particular situation, but I think the assumption he's not competitive and he would accept a secondary role is just not true. I think he wants to be a starter in this league again.
John, let's talk about some other players who actually were on the field and helped contribute to the win yesterday, because I know it's hard for people to believe.
Were there other players on the field?
I know it's hard for people to believe, but there are other players on the field. I do want to ask you about Zach Ertz, because this is a guy who a few years ago, a lot of people who, Eagle fans, sports fans in general, they were always questioning, is Zach Ertz ever going to live up to expectations? Is this guy ever going to be one of the top 5 tight ends in this league statistically? Well, now he has that record. Now he has broken the Jason Witten record. He got the most receptions of this season. For fantasy football people, he's the number 1 fantasy football tight end in the NFL this year. He's finally getting the stats. So is Zach Ertz at his peak right now, or does he have more to grow?
Well, I don't know if he can do much more statistically. I think there's always room to grow as a player, and Zach will tell you, and certainly from his standpoint, it would always be in the blocking aspect of it, where he's still sort of below average. But as a receiving tight end, he's he's as good as it gets, and he gets the football so much because he's always open. And I don't know who thought he was sort of underachieving or not living up to his potential even before the
fans.
season.
It's the fans who see a guy and say, well, you don't have X number of receptions or touchdowns or whatever it may be, and they hyper criticize a guy because maybe he doesn't look like Tony Gonzalez out there or something.
Well, I think everybody's different, and you look at certain guys with that kind of athleticism of a Tony Gonzalez. I mean, that might be the standard bearer as far as dangerous receiving tight ends. And even today, if you look at him versus Kelsey, which is sort of like who's the better tight end, Kelsey's a little bit more explosive. Zach is probably a little bit more consistent as far as route running and getting open. So he's more of the type that he just beat the record of, which was who he modeled his game after, and Jason Witten. He's more of that type of tight end who wasn't Jimmy Graham or Tony Gonzalez, but there are different types of players, and I think that kind of explains that.
John, on the flip side, we saw on the defensive side another very, very, very good game from Avonte Maddox. Your big picture, what kind of role has he carved out for himself moving forward? When guys come back healthy, whether Darby is back here next year and Mills and all these guys, and of course the Eagles may draft a cornerback, they may go out and sign a guy. What kind of role do you think Maddox has carved out for himself moving forward? Because for the last few weeks, he's playing some great football.
Yeah, he really has. And I asked Jim Schwartz this last week because I was interested. You kind of get pigeonholed because of his size, and he's so short as far as being an inside corner. But he was really an outside corner in college. That's what he does best. And he's just been flat out better than, say, Sidney Jones. And Doug basically ruled out Sidney Jones for Week 17 anyway. So he's going to continue to be the left corner, and I think it's going to be interesting if they give him an opportunity to be an outside corner next season. I think he deserves that opportunity. There have been other guys, Brent Grimes being the most notable example, has played a long time on the outside in this league, and I think Avonte's got a lot of those same attributes. And yeah, it's going to be an issue at times if you're playing Mike Evans or Julio Jones or somebody with tremendous size, even DeAndre Hopkins, if he was healthier, and he still had a big game. But I think if you look at the other corners on this team, he deserves to be in that mix, and he's played his way into that mix. But ultimately, if you're asking me, I think the Eagles are going to make him the nickelback, and they'll be better at that position. So he's certainly going to have a role, but I think he deserves at least the opportunity to fight for one of those outside spots.
John, I want to piggyback on that because that was interesting, the part about Sidney Jones. He was drafted 2 years ago to kind of be that corner that the Eagles have been lacking for years and years and years. Obviously, he came in with the Achilles tear. He had to heal throughout the year. He had that one game last year, kind of cameo with the Cowboys, against the Cowboys. But then he comes in this year, and he didn't look particularly good in preseason. And then throughout the season with the different injuries and the inconsistent play, is Sidney Jones someone that the Eagles can still look at and say, we didn't totally whiff on that draft pick?
Well, I think it's a little bit early to say that, but it's certainly valid to have some concerns. I mean, this is the third hamstring injury. So first off the bat, you have to wonder, is this a guy who can stay on the field, number one? And once he gets on the field, he's got to be more consistent. And, because he has the talent he has, ended up being a second-round pick, as you mentioned, but really was regarded as a first-round talent, he's going to get chance after chance after chance more than most players. And certainly he'll be in the mix for being one of the outside corners next year of what I was just talking about with Avonte. But at some point, this sport is a meritocracy, and if somebody like Avante keeps playing better than him, he's going to play. And we're talking Nick Foles versus Carson Wentz, and Nick Foles is going to be on the field because of his success. You could say the same thing with Sidney Jones and Avonte Maddox. Even if Sidney Jones was healthy enough to play this week, Avonte Maddox is still going to be the left corner because he's outplayed him, and they got to win this football game. And this is about right now, and he's won that spot for the short term. Long term, it's probably different, but we'll see how it shakes out.
John, speaking of winning, so Bears coach Matt Nagy spoke to the media today, and he basically insinuated that if at halftime the Rams had the 49ers game in hand, that, he may be smart, as he calls it, and have some guys take a rest in the second half of their game. So it looks like that the Bears may or may not be going out with a full slate of starters versus the Vikings, which that might be a little bit of a frustrating situation for Eagle fans who are hoping the Bears would take it to the Vikings, per se.
Yeah, well, I think they will ultimately. And people need to understand, for the Bears, this is like playing the Cowboys or the Giants for the Eagles. This is one of their two big rivals. They always want to beat them, and they certainly don't want to see them a third time in the playoffs. So I ultimately think they're going to play to win the game. I don't know if they're going to win the game because it's in Minneapolis. Vikings tend to play very well there. They're a lot better there than they are on the road. So I think that's the bigger issue. But I think the Bears are going to try to win the football game. The Bears know right off the bat. They're not getting a first-round bye because the Rams are playing the 49ers. You can wait till halftime. You can wait till the third quarter. The Rams aren't losing that game. And the Bears kind of know that. But from the Eagles' perspective, even if the Bears don't play, which, again, I don't expect that to be the case, when you're in Week 17, look at last year when the Eagles were in the position they were. They didn't play anybody. You have the right to do whatever you want to do if you put yourself in the position to where you're in the playoffs and you're comfortable with your slot. And that's just – the Eagles have to accept that.
All right, John, I got a couple of questions that are not football related because we've been having a couple of side conversations going on throughout the day. First of all, favorite Christmas song and who sings it?
Wow, that's a good question. There's old school, like I like any Sinatra, the Christmas song, but I would say for the modern people, Run DMC, what is it, Christmas in Hollis? I think
yes.
That would be my favorite new school Christmas song.
Okay. Your position on eggnog?
I hate it. Not a big fan. If I want to drink anything with alcohol, I will have a drink or a beer. I'm not drinking any weird kind of milky concoction. Yeah, I have no interest in any eggnog.
Yeah, I said earlier that eggnog was disgusting, and apparently some people disagree with me. So I just
don't say some people. I'm
well,
right across the studio.
Well, okay. Well, Deshaun didn't like my strong position on eggnog. So
now I'm with you there. I don't like that consistency. I don't like it at all. So to each their own, but it's not for me.
All right, John. We need you to settle one more thing. Beyonce or Rihanna?
You can't go wrong there, but I would go Rihanna.
John's with me.
Well,
yes.
listen. For fairness, I said Rihanna also, but you made the point that Beyonce was overrated, which I thought was ridiculous.
Well, look, I do think Beyonce's overrated. I don't got time for her multiple personality stuff. I think Rihanna owns her and is more real than Beyonce is.
Yeah, but if you're going fantasy, you're not really talking about any of the everyday nonsense. So I'm just looking at
John. I am a very complicated individual. Okay, I can't go very simple. Okay.
Okay. But as I said, you cannot go wrong there, no matter what you choose. That's not like eggnog. You're going wrong with eggnog. You can't go wrong with Beyonce or Rihanna.
All right. John McMullen joined us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline as he does each and every day, except for tomorrow because it's Christmas Day, and we'll all be off. So, John, Merry Christmas. Hope you enjoy your day tomorrow, and we'll check in with you again on Wednesday here on the Sports Bash.
Merry Christmas, John.
All right. Merry Christmas, guys. Enjoy it.